Welcome to Purpose 360. I'm Carol Cohn, and today more than ever before, companies, brands, and their partners need to stand for something beyond the bottom line. I've created this program to provide insights and ideas to share with you so that you can apply them to your work the very next day. The goal here is to up-level your purpose and to benefit companies and society. So please join us. When your name's Unreasonable, you are going to be really surprised at the ideas, the impact, and the velocity of innovation. Here's part 2 of our dazzling conversation with Daniel Epstein, founder and CEO of the Unreasonable Group. Let's talk a little bit about, you work with high net worth family offices. And is that different structure? And how does that work? And then after we finish this, I've got some idea for you.
So on the investment side, I would say by accident, we've built one of the best deal flow engines on the planet. If in terms of private equity, whether or not you even care about impact, and obviously that's all we care about, but they're just outperforming. What a typical portfolio would look like. And so we work with about 1,000 sources of capital. Those could be private equity groups, sovereign wealth funds, family offices, individual investors, corporate venture funds. And we're constantly connecting our entrepreneurs into values-aligned sources of financing to help them scale. But what happened was we realized that individuals like us, I guess, we can't participate in those investment opportunities. And so one of my teammates, her name's Pratibha, I was also in New York. She's brilliant. Her background's in banking, and she runs our investment group right now. And she was passing opportunities. Like zero mass water, the atmospheric water generation technology, they hold clean drinking water out of the air with solar panels. She's passing them to BlackRock or Blackstone or Barclays, whoever it might be. And she sat back and she said, this is the best investment opportunity I've come across. Why can't people like me invest? People like her, working professional. She's a mom, woman of color. She's not a billionaire, right? And that led to the genesis of the Unreasonable Collective, which is a new initiative where we're working with individuals who want to be able to invest into these game-changing growth stage companies, but normally wouldn't get access to them or couldn't afford the minimums.
That's great.
And so
now, has that been launched?
That just launched, actually. We just closed and announced our first syndicated deal into a company called Air Protein, which is making quite literally making protein and meat out of the air. And you can go to airprotein.com. But we did just close our first syndicate there and just launched. So we have about 40 members kicking off this year right now.
So if I want to invest, I better talk to you offline.
Would love to. Yeah, would love to.
That'd be great.
Selfishly for me, though, it's true. It's like I'm working with all these companies. I'm like, can I put 10,000 in? And they're like, no, you cannot. But now we can.
Oh, that's great.
Which is really exciting.
Oh, okay, that's going to be an outcome of this podcast. Like, how many investors at $10,000 increments can we add in? Maybe it's the Purpose Collaborative will have a subgroup of our reach. Yeah,
it'd be fun, Carol. Well, the only other thing I'll say is, we're trying to democratize access, and thereby give more support to these companies as well. But the bare minimum goals that we have there in terms of changing the demographics of who has access is at least half of our members are women or people of color, and that's a bare minimum. And same of the CEOs that we support through the syndicate as well. And so it's a cool cadre of individuals.
I love that idea. So I'm going to give you an idea. So as an employee benefit, and I know Kristen's going to go, yeah, that we will on an annual basis or one time take a certain amount of funds in their name and invest it with you.
Oh, cool. Love that. Yeah.
How cool is that?
That would be really fun.
Okay, you can have that. You can have that idea. I love it. I love that idea. So you give a lot of speeches and you talk about the future of capitalism. And by the way, do you know the guys at Just Capital? Do you know Martin Whitaker, the CEO?
I don't. I feel like I should.
Oh my God, I have to introduce you guys. Oh my God, they're totally inventing the future of capitalism via data, a lot of data and programs and such, and a lot of research. I'll introduce you because you will love them.
I would love that.
He talks a lot about, stakeholder-based capitalism. But what are you seeing? And as more and more companies are coming to you, I'm just curious about, is there just a shift in the view of the C-suite and that they really get it?
Our goal, to your point, is to repurpose capitalism, inject purpose back into it. The belief here is that capitalism is a tool. It's the most powerful tool in our tool belt. And, a hammer can be used to build or destroy a house. And so capitalism is the same thing, right? So how do we lever business to build a more just society, environmentally and socially? And I think what's happening is I think the C-suite's actually always been people who care, but they had so much pressure to typically report on quarterly financial earnings. And if not, they're ousted, right? The average tenure for a public CEO is less than 4 years. What's now happened is the boards and the pension funds that have significant stakes in these public companies, they're starting to say, you know what? Actually, this work matters. Like, let's reform the business model so that we're proud of the impact that we're having out in the world. And so I think but I really feel like the C-suite's kind of always wanted to do that, but the pressures haven't been there because of the public markets. And now you're starting to see that alleviated a little bit, or you're starting to see more so that businesses are realizing and boards are realizing that actually, if we don't change our ways, we're not going to exist in the future. So now it's not just a moral imperative, it's a business imperative to actually make the shifts. So, example, we're working with Shell out in the UK to look at how do you transition the UK branch of Shell to carbon neutrality. They know that the fossil fuel industry is not going to be the future of their business. I think it's because the boards are now acknowledging that, and the pension funds who are owning these companies are acknowledging that now we're seeing the C-suite actually be able to bring them their full selves to their job, right? Instead of having to leave part of that back at home.
But for Shell, are you again bringing your novel approach to bringing in entrepreneurs and having them fund it, and then they have access to ideas? How does that work in terms of access to the ideas, the IP?
Yeah, so the IP is always, of course, owned by the entrepreneurs. Nobody signs an NDA in any of our programs. Nobody can, because then we can't have real conversations. In essence, and so we create a genuine spirit of trust and collaboration, and the entrepreneurs will share as much as they feel comfortable sharing. But we've never had an issue in the last 8 years of doing this of IP infringement. We've never had a lawsuit. We've never had any contention there. And I don't know how. In some ways, maybe we've gotten really lucky. But what tends to happen is the entrepreneurs are an expert in a very specific technology, and the partners are experts in different ones, and they find ways to collaborate. And sometimes they license. Sometimes our partners will license the technology, become a customer for our entrepreneurs. Sometimes they'll form a joint venture together and kind of combine the IP. But it's fascinating that it's never been an issue, which it's a great question. But it hasn't come up yet as a problem.
Oh, well, good. Well, again, I bet it goes back to your values. And I think that you're creating that collaboration, and it helps to scale. And so there's an essence in it that everybody, it's like, dare I say, strange idea, to dog park. I have no idea how dogs can go into a dog park, like the big ones, and they play.
They don't
just
have fun.
It's so
they
weird.
Just accept the rules, no fighting, because it will ruin it for everybody.
There you go. Okay, so see, I'm building off of you on the hammer can build or destroy. Let's take a pause before we close our conversation with Daniel to talk about our latest In the Know. About a year ago, I interviewed Tony Cervone, Chief Communications Officer for General Motors. I was fascinated by the shift that Mary Barra had taken that organization. Their purpose was very aspirational, moving humanity forward. And then they had an operational theme line underneath it. 0, 0, 0. Zero emissions, zero fatalities, and zero congestion in cities. Now, I was wondering, those are really high-level goals. How are they going to get there? Well, in this week's In the Know, I was thrilled to read that Mary Barra, CEO of General Motors, had taken a substantial step towards the first zero emissions. She has made the declaration for General Motors, being the first U.S. automobile manufacturer, that they will have zero emissions in their automobiles by 2035. As well, the entire company will become carbon neutral, including operations 5 years after that. The Detroit automakers' push into electric vehicles has gone into overdrive. GM has already announced it will invest $27 billion in electric and autonomous vehicles in the next 5 years, a 35% increase over plans it made before the pandemic. It will offer 30 all-electric models worldwide by the middle of the decade. By the end of 2025, 40% of its U.S. models will be battery electric vehicles. The company plans to include crossovers, SUVs, sedans, and trucks in its electric vehicle lineup. It will also source 100% renewable energy to power its U.S. sites by 2030 and global sites by 2035. That's 5 years faster than it previously announced its global goal. So how exciting is this? The 112-year-old auto giant also unveiled a new corporate logo this month to signify its new direction as it openly pivots to electric vehicles. It wants to be seen as a clean vehicle company rather than a builder of cloud-spewing gas-powered pickups and SUVs. So I want to give a shout out, to Mary Barra. I am so excited about, she's taken a big, bold goal and she's saying, this is the future. It must be about a clean energy future. And she is not letting the pandemic be a challenge. She's letting it be an opportunity. Go, Mary. Now let's get back to our final conversation with Daniel Epstein. Talk about unreasonable.is. You're also storytelling, and I want our listeners to get it. That, they come to us and they go, well, here's our issue. How do I tell a story? But your stories are marvelous. It takes time for them to bubble up, but they're real. So, and that's powerful.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think the stories of, especially the entrepreneurs that we support, they do tell themselves. Like, you could have a podcast interview with every single one of these CEOs and just be enamored, like completely. And so I think, in terms of the stories that we tell through our media arm, it's really, we're not embellishing it at all in any way. It's just the personal stories of these. It's rare, right? I guess the way I'd put it is, there's no shortage of capital, especially in today's world. There's so much money on the sidelines. There's no shortage of great ideas, right? We all have them all the time. At least we think they are. We have them all the time. But there's a dearth of courage. in the world, and that it takes a very special person to risk everything towards trying to reimagine the status quo, and to trying to, bring bring more justice back into it. And that is just a hard path to go on. And so the stories are really easy to tell, because if you dig into the story, of the person who kind of gave up everything to try to look at, food security or insecurity in Bangladesh, or to launch a hydrogen cell powered vehicle out of Wales with, no business doing that, or whatever that might be, they're just remarkable. And the stories of grit and perseverance and of, bleeding edge technology and purpose. And it all just comes together. So naturally we had to become a storytelling engine too.
So are you shooting stories, obviously videos, for your partners like for Barclays and Shell and others?
Yeah. We think it's core to actually like the broader intentionality around repurposing capitalism. Like if we just kept these stories within the walls of our programs, how dare we, in essence. And so I think our partners feel the same way. Obviously, they want the stories of this work out there too. Yes. So in essence, we work with all of our partners on a storytelling component, but it's not, just to get back to that, it's not about sponsorship. It is like authentic stories.
So do you get into conversations between Barclays and one of their, companies that they're sponsoring or fellowships, and that you talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly?
We have not done that, but we should. That'd be fun.
The challenges. Yeah. Well, I'm envisioning actually something on either Netflix or Hulu about some of these.
There was a point we were actually looking at a Netflix show at one point. Then we just figured, let's just do what we're doing right now really well.
Yeah, it might divert your attention.
Point, because the world does need to hear these stories, right? Like, who knew you can make chicken out of carbon dioxide, or that you could have a farm in an urban environment that's 400 times more efficient?
So in terms of best practices in your storytelling, obviously Barclays PR team, they want to do it this way. And, so, and I don't want to say anything bad about them. So, but they have their rules and regs, right? And then Shell has theirs and your other partners have theirs. How do you break through that to make sure that they're really human, they're really authentic? So what's your special sauce?
I think it's just we can show what we've done in the past and just the quality of it, and so that just eases the tensions. I think when it's theoretical, it's harder, which is why like Barclays being one of our first substantial partners, they did take a lot of creative courage, right? to align with something called Unreasonable. But that was like, hey, we're going to do all these things together. But now that we can point to it, right? We can share the media, we can show the success of it, we can show the business success of it. It's a lot easier than to get a PR team behind it. And the truth is that the PR teams of most all of our partners are in love with the work that we're doing together, because it is a story generator.
It's real. It's a huge story generator. Do you ever work with not-for-profit? I mean, I know you were not-for-profit way back when, but let's just say hunger. There's a lot of not-for-profits. We work with One Action Against Hunger. They do most of their work in Africa. But do you sometimes take on not-for-profits to try and scale them?
We don't, and that's not to say that that's not needed in the world immensely, and that the work of these nonprofits isn't critically important. It's just we've just chosen to focus, and by focusing, we can just add more value where we do play. We do bring in nonprofit leaders as mentors, though, certainly. I occasionally will take some of our tools, like what we refer to as a brain trust, which is a 2-hour session where we can get a lot of resources to a company. We'll run that for nonprofits when we have the bandwidth to do that, just outside of the fellowship, though.
Yeah. What have you learned? Okay, so COVID has touched us all, and you were very much, your model was face to face, groups working together. You even have. Do you still have Unreasonable at Sea?
No, we just did that once. It was operational.
Okay, sounded good. So what did you do to shift during this year? And what have you learned from that you will apply when we can get back together?
Yeah, everything that we did was around physical convenience. So creating trust in person. If you would have asked me a year ago, hey, can you do this remotely? I would have said, no. You can't create that level of depth of relationship through a screen. And some of that's true, but really what we've learned is that actually there are some big benefits to being able to take our programming virtual. Part of it is, so when we run a brain trust, right? That is a specific session, the kind of methodology for ideation and prototyping from Google X, from the D School at Stanford, and IDEO. We've kind of merged it all together into our own hodgepodge thing. And you get 12 people together, temporary board of advisors who work on a particular problem, and it ends with a bunch of commitments from those people. And what's amazing about doing it virtually is curation. We can get anybody from across the globe. So we can get this like truly irreplicable board of directors together for 2 hours. It's not a huge ask. And no matter what your problem is, we can typically source like a really powerful group. The other benefit is time away from family is hard on everybody. And so when we would typically run a program in the past, it would be 2 weeks. We would take the CEO, fully immersive in person and gathering in some remote location somewhere in essence. And that's hard on their families and on their teams. And so not needing to have that much of a removal allows more people to be able to access the fellowship and not have that be a constraint towards joining us. But I think more importantly, our programs, we refer to it, sounds cheesy. We say it's a spark to a flame. And the program's the point of induction. The flame is you're in the fellowship for life. We're going to support you continually year round. But with a global community like we have, that support outside of our programs has to be virtual. It just doesn't work in person because we're distributed all around the world. And so what we've figured out how to do is actually get really good at creating this strong sense of trust and community and productivity virtually. I mean, what we miss is the white space of being together in person where you don't have something programmed and people just connect on a different level. We miss, the most powerful table, I believe, is not the boardroom table, it's the dinner table. And we miss, sitting around a table breaking bread and talking about family or whatever that might take you. And so we'll bring those parts back in when the world kind of normalizes, but we're going to keep so much of the virtual programming because it's just been so effective.
So we are almost winding down. I could talk to you forever, but I want to do something new. It's called the lightning round. Give me 5 to 10 of your favorite types of companies. Just like, what do they do?
Lonzatech, they convert carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide into polyethylene and jet fuel. So Virgin Atlantic flies their airliners now on recycled carbon. It's recycled jet fuel.
That's incredible. Okay, good one.
Air Protein that I mentioned, I just think it's crazy. The name says it all. You can make chicken out of air. 1MG, they're the largest mobile healthcare company in India, 37 million users on it, doing remote healthcare across the subcontinent. Zero mass water, we talked about that, but atmospheric water generation. River Simple out in Wales. It's a ultra efficient hydrogen cell powered vehicle. Take a liter of hydrogen. The only thing that comes out of the exhaust pipe is hot water. It gets 300 miles to a liter. Greenlight Planet. They're bringing distributed solar to over 20 million people who formerly had kerosene and no electricity. They're a profitable business doing that. Classcraft is a company actually based out of Canada, gamified learning. I am looking at things like grit and emotional intelligence and teamwork. They now have 9 million students on the platform. They're in over 180 countries. They're in 1 in 3 schools in the U.S. now. I expect COVID was an accelerant for that in a lot of ways. Andiamo, 3D printing orthotics and prosthetic limbs. One tenth the time, much more functional, half the price. I work with companies like Elvis and Cressy. They're out of London. They're taking waste materials, waste leather, old fire hoses, and they're converting it into like beautiful bags and products. 100% closed loop. Bridge Academies, based out of Kenya, fastest growing chain of schools on the planet. Average tuition is $3 a month. They're working with a couple 100,000 students right now who didn't have any any formal education. And these are actual schools and centers that are being built. So we could go on and on and on.
I know. It's great. I'm just teasing you now. And which corporate partners are funding those unreasonable impacts? Is it Barclays and others and Shell and this and this and that? How many of those?
Yeah, right now we work with Barclays. We work with Ernst & Young. We work with Accenture, Fossil, as I mentioned, Pearson, Shell. We're working with the Walton family. We worked with the U.S. State Department, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft.
Working with the Walton Family Foundation? Are you working with Carol?
Yes, actually. Yeah.
Oh, she's one of my favorite people. She was the former CEO of UNICEF.
Oh, it's amazing.
She's delightful.
Yep. Yeah.
She's really wonderful.
Yeah.
So, oh God, I hate to end this, but we're going to do more because you know what I'd love to do? I would love to do as a follow-on to do like really quick interviews with maybe a dozen of your funded organizations.
It'd be fun.
So why don't you think about that? I mean, really quick, we can give them like, here's 3 questions, boom, boom, boom. So that's what I'd love to do. And then the last thing is, and certainly not least, 3 insights, and I have to narrow this down, for a company, because, most of the people who listen to this and most of our clients, they're large companies, and they want to have authentic social impact. So whether obviously I'd say, gosh, you got to work with these guys, but, you're very select. You can't work with, everyone in the world. But what are the 3 insights you want to leave to them about when they are going to fund, whether it's their own accelerator or their not-for-profit partnerships towards their social issue? What's the 3 most important things they should think about?
I think that they definitely need to have leadership on it internally who can work cross-functionally. I think that's critical, right? So I mentioned the citizenship team at Barclays. We work with the DOC, which is the Center for Innovation at Accenture. Like these are teams that can pull on anybody across the entire organization. That's just remarkably important. I would say look at depth and breadth of employee engagement. So depth means like meaningfully showing up and dropping in with these companies to try to help find new solutions or things that you could potentially do together. But you can only do that with so many people, right? And so the breadth is then through the storytelling. We'll run events, but we'll engage 2,000 employees across Barclays who can also at scale actually add value. But it's like it's a much bigger thing. We built platforms to be able to do that. And the third one though would just be align the mission of that work with the core of the company. And like, once again, sponsorship is AstroTurf. And if it needs to be a business imperative, right? So why does this business in particular care about this social and environmental issue? I've said that should align directly with the trajectory of the business. And if it does, then it's real, right? Then it's, shared value or whatever we want to call that. But I would ensure that's there. The last thing is just, it is important to have buy-in from the top, as well. You need that entrepreneurial person or team who can kind of hustle, but then also to get kind of the highest levels of leadership, the C-suite or the board engaged. It just pays dividends because it allows it to last.
And that's fantastic. Those are great. I love the order in which you did that. Have you ever done an ROI on this? Like, so for Barclays, Shell, or whatever, and they've invested X, and then do they ask you to do some KPIs that say the outcome after year 2, 3 is, what's the ROI? Is there an average ROI or a base level ROI?
It's so different because they're getting different things from it, right? So for Shell, it might be like R&D. Right. And for Barclays, it could be business development. And for Accenture, it could be client development. So they're so different. I will say, though, all of our partners right now are actively renewing partners's with us. So,
I bet.
So,
do you have a waiting? You must have a waiting list.
It's like there's definitely a list, and we only have so much capacity. We're not, and we're not gonna scale and franchise or anything like that. We're keeping it intimate intentionally. But I would say too, if anybody's listening and wants to talk, obviously we'd love to jam. We'd love to have a conversation. And if we can't be helpful, we also probably know some folks who can.
Oh, that's really cool. So what's next for Daniel Epstein? Besides getting, dare I say, I want. Let's
getting
say
married.
it.
That's the biggest thing.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to embarrass you.
Yeah, but we're going to get married sometime next year because we're just waiting for COVID to be done. We don't want the slingshot there. That's probably the biggest thing that's next. And, for me, the culture is the most important thing, and trying to figure out how to do it really well remotely is hard. So that's a big push. And then obviously the launch of the Unreasonable Collective that we talked about is something that I am just remarkably excited about.
Daniel, this has been phenomenal. I knew it would be. I'm so excited for you. And I'm so glad that we stayed in touch over the years, because I have this tremendous amount of pride watching you grow and flourish, and the amount of scale that you are having an impact. When you were that 18-year-old and you're writing in your journal, what should I do? I mean, God, and you've got such a continually long runway ahead of you, which is
we're just getting started.
You should basically,
we're in
you should be
one.
on the cover of. Have you been on the cover of Fast Company yet?
No.
You should be.
You're too kind. You're way too kind.
You absolutely, you should be.
Maybe
so we
in 20 years, yeah.
No, sooner than that. So anyway, it's been a delight. I want to thank you so much. I wish you the best of success, both in all the unreasonable children as well as your marriage.
Yeah, thank you.
And I always like to end our conversations to ask our listeners, which is exactly what you did when you were 18 years old in your journal, what do you stand for?